Hello and welcome to the Franchise Marketing Show. This episode was recorded at the International Franchise Show at the Excel. So although we use some really good microphones, there is some background noise going on, so there's some announcements going on because obviously it was a really busy show. But the content is absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed recording these interviews and I hope you enjoy watching/listening to them as well. Enjoy.
Harvey, thank you very much for coming on the Franchise Marketing Show. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Okay, my name's Harvey. People will probably know me from the franchise show that I do on LinkedIn. I do it every Tuesday. I'm also doing something called Franchising Brand Stories. And I am the head of franchise for Coffee Republic.
Fantastic. And I kind of asked you to come on the podcast last night, and I thought it'd be good because I've seen you interview lots of people, so it's kind of nice to hear the other side of it. How do you feel being interviewed rather than being the interviewer?
I prefer it the other way around, but yeah. you're lovely, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Fantastic, fantastic. How have you found the show so far?
It's good, yeah, it's good. We were toying with with exhibiting here, and it's just good to meet up with fellow franchise enthusiasts and professionals and friends. So, I love going to these things. Wandering about in a hat. So
it's a brilliant bit of personal branding.
That's it. That's what it is. Don't regret that at all.
So, how did you? Well, I suppose why did you start the interviews you started doing on LinkedIn? Like, what was the idea behind it? And
that's a really good question. I started it for a few reasons. The first, and it still remains the case, was to add value to the franchise industry. I wanted to be able to bring others up and highlight other people in the franchising industry. It was definitely the primary goal for it. Also, I wanted to learn myself. I'm inquisitive and curious, and by talking with really experienced, fantastic people on that, I get to absorb all of the knowledge that they've got. But it's both shows are about the community at large. They're both done in a way that anybody who comes on that makes a comment, I'll put it up there, I'll recognise them. I'll say they're there, I'll say what they do. And if they put a good comment on there, something that's really interesting, it does genuinely drive the direction of that show. I write down the person's name, and that's it. It's just a bit like this, I suppose. It's just a conversation. And I've been really, really enjoying doing it. And there wasn't something at the time that was like that. I can even give you the story behind the hat, if you want.
Yeah. I think everyone wants to know the story behind the hat.
I mean, a few people know it, but I guess about a year ago, I was becoming more active on LinkedIn, and I started listening to a LinkedIn Live, a chap called Don Cohen. It's called Hour of Empower, and it was a great show. He did it every day for 600 days, a LinkedIn Live, amazing. But I started commenting on it, and every time I commented, he brought my name up there on the screen, and he did it for everyone. And I loved the feel, the rhythm of it. And he reached out to me to have a Zoom call, and I had a Zoom call with him, and he said, "Do you want to be on the show?" And I went, "I don't know, I've never done that sort of thing before. I think I'd done one podcast, and that was it." And I thought he would say 2 or 3 months' time. We said, "Do you want to be on the show tomorrow?" That's what he said. So I did it. It was about this time last year. It was around the time of this exhibition last year. So I did the episode. I really enjoyed it, and he asked me back, and I became a bit of a regular on it. But I realised that what he did, I wanted to emulate that for the franchising industry. So I took a rather bold step to just one day launch this show, and it's grown in popularity, and I hope it still adds value. It adds value for me. I really enjoy doing it. But the hat. So this guy in America wore a hat, okay, and about the second or third episode in, I thought to myself, maybe I should get myself a hat. So I bought a hat, I wore it, someone made some comment about Indiana Jones, that was enough for me to wear it again, and And then I think it was Kevin Ayres that said I chatted with the hat, and then suddenly I thought maybe I should start to embrace this thing, and now I wear the hat.
It's a brilliant bit of personal branding. Like I must admit, we met for the first time last night actually,
Yes.
but as soon as I saw you, I instantly knew it was you. I instantly recalled your interviews and seeing you on LinkedIn. So it's a brilliant bit of personal branding.
Accidental.
Yeah, it works. It works. What was your kind of introduction to franchising? So you obviously said that you really want to bring the stories of franchising to life, and what was your introduction to the sector?
Well, I'm relatively new to the sector. It's one of the reasons I do the show, because I want to learn from other people. I've been mostly in equipment sales throughout my career, but 2 or 3 years ago, maybe just after COVID, I wanted to swap to doing something that was more around people. I always loved that part of the job. It's definitely the reason that I enjoy doing the shows that I do, because I get to chat to people. But I wanted to do something more in operations, something more around the retail side rather than that back of house. And I had known Coffee Republic for a number of years, having flogged them stuff over the years. And an opportunity came up for a sort of hybrid role, partly in operations, partly in franchise sales. And it's perfect, and I loved it, and that was my introduction beginning of last year.
Amazing. And if you like working with people, I don't think there's a better sector than franchising, is it? Because essentially it is about people and relationships and collaboration and all those different kind of things.
Exactly. It's that sort of, I always talk to people about that trust journey as well, and I think that's really what it is. You know, you're just, when I talk to franchisees, I say, look, there's one side of this which is all the numbers and that type of thing, but what's much more important than that is getting to know one another, seeing whether we can work together, and that takes time. It can't be rushed, and you know that the process of getting to know someone and them gradually getting to know you is a really enjoyable part of the job.
Yeah.
So I love it.
I'm always interested to ask people who are kind of newer into franchising, just what was your perception of franchising before you started working in it? Did you have a real understanding of how the sector worked? And because I know from my side, I didn't, and it kind of, when you first come to these shows and you know nothing about franchising, it opens your eyes to what a massive sector it is and how diverse it is. What was your kind of view of franchising before working in it?
I was quite familiar with it, because my work in equipment sales took me to most of the QSR brands.
Right.
So I worked a lot with McDonald's and with Burger King and KFC and Pizza Express, those sorts of brands. So I was aware that they used franchising as a model. I didn't know a huge amount about it, but I was certainly aware of it as an industry and as a model before I got the job. Yeah.
And since becoming part of it, what have you found the most kind of surprising thing? Or
It's a good question. I think what I'm pleasantly surprised about is the camaraderie between people in franchising, or the friendships that I've already made within other people, you know, in the franchising industry. I think it's quite a supportive industry. You know, even amongst people who are working in the same space, I think that there's a supportive attitude. And certainly all of the people that I've been, you know, very honoured to meet and have discussions with on those shows, you know, it really shines through how they also support other people in the industry. So I think that pleasantly surprised me, having been part of the industry. Yeah.
And it is such a collaborative sector. I've just had this conversation actually, and funny enough, but why do you think it is? Is that different than most sectors, do you think? I mean, I don't know if you've worked across other sectors, is franchising different in terms of the collaborative nature?
I think it is. I think in a lot of other industries there's a lot more sort of hiding things away, not really sort of talking about things, you know, your strategies, your you know, how you do things. But I think franchising as an industry, we're trying to get it out there as a, you know, as a concept, especially for younger people as well. I mean, I've got a fair few episodes coming up that are focusing on younger people getting into franchising. I might have an apprentice coming up I'm a big fan of that show, so I've got a few of those that are possibly lined up. And also, I don't know if you're aware, the Titus Academy in Palm Beach. So I've got the guy who runs the Titus Academy coming on, and he's looking potentially at putting that into a university here in the UK. And I think it would be great for younger people to have franchising as a potential career path, or as a scaling model for a business that they start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that has to be the dream, the aim, isn't it? That when someone thinks about starting a business, or they think they want to be a business owner in the UK, franchising at some point of that process is on the agenda. And I think at the moment, I know I probably started 2 businesses before I ever even knew what franchising was. It didn't come on my radar at all. And I don't know how we achieve that, but I think that's the ultimate goal. If someone is interested in business ownership, part of that journey is considering franchising, which I think in the US probably happens a lot more than it does in the UK.
Yeah, I think they are ahead in some ways, but I think because we've got that opportunity to kind of mould ourselves a little bit differently. I mean, next week I'm going to be talking about whether franchising should be regulated, which is going to be an interesting conversation, and I think people are going to definitely have one thought or another on that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, to have that conversation and to sort of see what people think on it is what makes it really interesting.
Yeah, fantastic. Have some, we call them quickfire questions that we've been asking people. They don't necessarily have to be quickfire answers. I think we probably covered it. What was your introduction that brought you to franchising? But we probably covered that one. Yeah. If you were to become a franchisee, invest in a franchise, is there any particular brand or sector that really kind of interests you?
I think I better say Coffee Republic on that one. I think whenever I talk to franchisees about this, about how they make their choice, I think I always try and talk about passion first. Because franchising, you get the tools to do the job well, and you get trained, and some experience is useful, but I think if you've got a passion for an industry or a sector, and then you apply those tools to that passion, I think you can be really, really successful. I think for me, my background, I studied to be a chef. I've worked in the hospitality and food sector all my life, so I think it would probably be something in that sector, in the hospitality industry, I would have thought.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Who in the sector do you admire or have been inspired by from the conversations you've had so far?
Many people. I think Amrit is Wolfinch is a great inspiration, particularly when we were talking about your competition and how you work with them. I think he's a good example of that. But my goodness, I've spoken to so many people that are fantastic. It's hard to sort of pin down. I had a really enjoyable conversation with Red Boswell, and he's quite a character.
Yeah, he's a great guy, isn't he?
He did the show from his truck in Texas, or his Jeep, or something like that.
Really?
And I don't know if you've ever seen his profile picture, but he's jumping in the air.
Yeah.
And I tried copying that. Don't do this at home, folks. But, but I tried copying it by the start of the show when he was on it. I jumped off my chair. But it didn't even catch it. It cut out the first part of it.
Oh,
so, no one even saw it.
Did he talk about his original franchise that he set up?
Not so much.
The poop scooping franchise.
It was more... So each week on that show we have a different topic, and we try and stick loosely around that topic, because it's generally about 50 minutes. So I think any longer than that, and it's a lot of somebody's time. And because of his profile picture partly, but also it was an interesting conversation. The topic was don't jump into franchising. So the conversations was more around due diligence and the questions you should ask prior to choosing or getting into franchising. But there's been some amazing people. Farrah Rose, a real inspiration, so humble. never proclaims herself as being an expert, but absolutely is. I can say it. I'm Simon Wise. Gosh, I could keep name dropping so many people here, but Simon has been a big supporter of the show. The comments that come in on the show always really they drive the show, and they make my job a lot easier. Because I've got great people in the community asking amazing questions, and I've got a fantastic person answering those, and I'm just facilitating a conversation. So it's strange to be on this side.
Well, you're doing a good job. What's the thing you enjoy, and you may have covered this one as well in fairness, but what's the thing you enjoy most about being part of the franchise community?
I think it's talking with the people and learning from people. People seem to be open enough they're not closed off, so we can have great conversations, especially the franchising brand stories that I'm doing. I'm speaking to founders and directors and owners about how they formed their business and and what they're doing in the future, and they're just really open with that. So as I said to you, I enjoy talking and being with people. People is my thing, not paper. So I've just been loving having these conversations. It's fantastic.
And then I suppose this is kind of the big question in franchising. What do you think as a sector we could do collectively or individually to really raise the profile of franchising?
I think it's going to be a lot of little things over a long period of time, probably. I think a key is to make younger people aware of the industry. So I think by bringing in the qualification in as a degree that you can do, or a college course, I think is key. Putting it into the education system so that younger people are aware of what this is and how they can use it in their careers, how they can use it to grow a business as well. I think we're in a time where it's fantastic, but a lot of young people have great aspirations for starting a business, and that's fantastic, and I really encourage it. But a method of scaling that business is obviously franchising, and it's a fantastic way to do it. And I think if young people can be more aware of that, then it's great. And doing things like this, doing the shows that I'm doing, it's raising awareness on LinkedIn and other platforms, so that when people go on there and they can see it or see historic footage, they're starting to understand what the industry is. I think they're key, to keep on talking about it. I think that there are other minor things that we can do, but I think we need to look after our industry as well. I speak to a lot of people in the US, and they're so heavily regulated, and it goes down to sort of FDDs and, documents. And it's much less of perhaps a conversation to have, and I think at the moment we can have this conversation. So then people are getting to know the brands, getting to understand the stories, and then making a more informed decision. Making a more informed decision was exactly one of the premises behind the franchise show, because that's exactly what I wanted people to be able to do, to think about questions they might be able to ask, be inspired by different thoughts or things that people have said, to ask different questions, hopefully make a better decision, have a better experience in franchising, and become an advocate for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I've often, very often about the shows, I've tried to and get people on the show who are here as visitors for the day. Because I think we could learn so much from them, just about what they're here, what they're looking for, what's driving them, what's their motivation, what kind of brand they're looking for. And I think you're right, like the shows you're doing allows people to get much more of an idea about the brand and the personality of the brand. I've often thought it would be an incredible TV show, a bit like, is it Homes in the Sun? But you took someone from the show here and you said, right, we know that you're interested in this sector. What we're going to do is you're going to go and spend 2 days in these 3 different businesses, and they go out with franchisees, and then.
Yeah,
but
I think that'd be brilliant.
That kind of thing, I think
it'd be brilliant.
it would be a great show, and I think it would. Those type of business shows tend to do quite well. It'd be an amazing way for people to see all of the different sectors and things that franchising touches.
Yeah, I think so. I think even here, like a concierge service might be a great idea. Someone comes to the door and someone meets them and says, well, what are you looking for today? Have you got any sectors you're interested in? And, takes them round, makes an introduction. I think sometimes otherwise people, do a lot of footfall and a lot of walking about, and perhaps sometimes miss, something that could be a bit of a gem for them. So
and it's. I think that's the thing, isn't it? There's so many different. The thing is with franchise, there's so many different brands. It touches almost every sector. But the one thing that I think is very difficult to get across is that, and it's the most important thing. If I was looking to invest in a franchise, it's what will I actually be doing? Like, what will my day-to-day life be like once I become a franchisee? You can't really get that across when you're at a show. And I think it's something franchisors could be better at in their marketing in general. But the one thing I'd want to know is, what's my day? Am I employing staff? Am I managing a team? Am I a solo business owner? Will I be able to choose my own diary? And it's that information which I think is the most important thing for people looking around here. They want to change their life.
Yes.
That's why they're here.
Yeah.
It's how do you get that across to people? How franchising?
I think it's really important. I often talk to prospective franchisees and I say to them, how do you see your life as a franchisee? What's your dream? And some of them have such vivid explanations of it. It's fantastic. I remember talking to someone who was a radiographer or a sonographer, something like that. And his day-to-day job was very well paid, but he sat in a clinical room with no windows, artificial light. The conversations he had with people, if you're coming in and you've got a problem with your back or your knee, you're just worried about what's wrong with that, and you're not really in the mood to chat. And when I asked him, he said, I want a coffee shop where I can smell the coffee, I can hear the grinder. He said, I get to know my staff. He said, the sun is going to come in through the window. It's going to be west-facing so that sunlight is orange. And he had a picture in his mind of it, And I think it's so important to try and align with what that dream is, what that picture is, because it's different for everyone.
Yeah, that's amazing, someone having that much detail. But it's exactly that, isn't it? Clearly the financials and are really important. That's part of the decision-making process. But ultimately, everyone here who's looking around has some sort of pain in their life they want to solve. They might hate their boss. They might be in a room that's dark all day. And that's the bit which I think as a sector I don't know how you do it collectively as a sector, but I think every brand should be talking more about how they solve those pain points as much as anything.
I think so, and I think it's that story as well, and it's the reason why I'm doing that second show, which is that franchising brand story. When I talk to franchisees, it's about getting the story, the characters, the experiences that we have. That you couldn't put in a brochure, you couldn't even put on a video really. But if you hear the story behind the brand from the people that matter in that industry or in that company, then you start as a franchisee, or if you're a franchisor, a collection of franchisees start to become more aligned with what values you have. And so I think it's really important to get to the stories behind all the numbers. The numbers are important. It's a business opportunity, it's an investment, you want a return. But it's often a 5-year commitment, and you've got to be able to have that right work-life balance, And I often talk to people about what balance they want, how do they see that day to day? Like you said, if you can work out how someone sees that day to day, what is a day like, then you can tailor it to their needs and solve those pain points.
Yeah, and it's really we interviewed a franchisee a couple of years ago for a brand we work with, and we try and ask the questions to get this kind of comment out, because I think it's what's really important. But we kind of said to him, what's different now since leaving the corporate world and becoming a franchisee with this brand? How has your life changed? And he just said, the biggest thing for me is that since being a franchisee of this brand, I've never missed a parents' evening. but for the 7 years prior, I'd never been to one. And we were just like, cut. Like that's unbelievable. Like, and
Absolutely.
that's the really powerful elements that will, you know, you need to, I think every brand should try and get into their marketing.
Yeah, if you can get to what that pain point is, and especially something so relevant and powerful as that one, and then you can solve that with something they love doing, that they're passionate about, and they're making a living from it and being successful, then it's a win-win.
Yeah.
And it can be a fantastic opportunity for someone.
Absolutely. Harvey, thank you so much for joining us. How can people watch the show? What's the best thing to do to watch the show? And
so the best thing to do, it's on a Tuesday at 5:15 GMT and a Thursday at 5:15. So 5:15 is the number to remember there. You can go to my profile at those times on LinkedIn. It'll be running live in the background. Connect with me on LinkedIn and I can send you an invite. And yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
fantastic. Thanks, Harvey.
Thank you.